Hey, Lee.
Hi, Tim. How are you?
I am good. Thanks for doing this tonight.
Okay, well, listen, this is not normal, right? To be in the middle of the night, because what's happening right now with budget reconciliation, with this vote-a-rama, gives the Democrats, who are really out of power in the Senate, this opportunity to bring things to the American public so they can at least see them voted on. You guys might not get any of the amendments you want, but you're there to say, these are things we care about,
Yep.
and let the Republicans be voting against them. Is that right?
Yeah, Lee, you've got it. They're setting up this budget process. This is just step one, and it's going to play out over the course of the next few weeks. But we know the end game: slash programs affecting everyday Americans, and then use that money to give big tax breaks to the wealthy. We saw them do it in 2017. They're doing it again this time, and both the Senate and House Republicans are making plain that's what their goal is. So today, what we do as Democrats is we bring up amendments. You shouldn't be doing things that will raise grocery prices. You shouldn't be doing things that will raise housing prices. You shouldn't be laying off everybody in the national parks. I have an amendment that's going to be voted on later, and I'll give you the pitch. I get 1 minute on the floor, and here's my 1 minute. Donald Trump called our friend and former colleague John McCain a loser and refused to go to a veteran cemetery because he said it was filled with losers. So no surprise, Donald Trump's waging a war on veterans. They're laying off folks at the VA so people can't get appointments. And when they go mass firing of federal employees, 30% of the workforce is veterans. Only 3 or 4% of the civilian workforce, but of the federal workforce, it's veterans. That's who they're punishing. Our veterans are not dumb. They don't want to be told thanks for your service and then get kicked in the teeth. My amendment would say no layoffs, no furloughs, no reclassifications of veterans who are federal employees. Let's see the Republicans come up with a reason to vote against that.
Yeah, and that's the point of what you guys are doing. People don't understand how our government works all the time. And budget reconciliation is a particularly weird thing, right? People
Yes.
don't really get it. They're going to get their thing passed anyway. What you guys are doing is trying to say, we'd like to make this change. We'd like to make this change. We'd like to make this change. And one of your changes, you're saying, I got a minute to say, I'm standing up for veterans. Do not cut veterans. These are our heroes. And we're not just going to kick them in the teeth on their way out the door. And as the daughter in law of a Navy pilot and a real, true American hero, I have to tell you, we need people like you standing up for the veterans, but even the Republican voting veterans need to see who's standing up for them and who's not. Because if you pronounce your amendment and
Yep.
they vote against it, then they can see who you're really working for.
Absolutely. And then what you see, Lee, is even though we're in minority, there comes a point where this kind of breaks. We saw it in 2017. They were doing a lot of damage in the first 8 months of the Trump administration. But when they tried to repeal the Affordable Care Act and they went further and they wanted to cut Medicaid, suddenly the moms, 50% of births in America are compensated by Medicaid to low income moms. Kids who use Medicaid so they can get a wheelchair to go to school, seniors who use Medicaid to be in nursing homes, they all turned out, and we got Republican votes to stop Donald Trump's rampage. We got to make these amendments and fight about them all. And even if we don't succeed tonight, then we're going to fight about them more tomorrow. And we're starting to hear. I was doing a farmers roundtable in a redder part of Virginia last Friday, and they were saying, wait a minute, these ag programs are important. And when you do tariffs, you're killing us. And when you do mass deportations, we don't have a workforce. The consequences of Trump's depraved actions are starting to make themselves plain, and that builds up pressure, and that's what we need right now. And that's why what you're doing is so important.
No, I think it's really important that you're drawing attention to this because you look at something like USAID, which just sounds like an acronym to most Americans. They don't understand it. They go, okay, well, we're sending money overseas, I guess. And you're like, no, our foreign money often is spent in the States, paying our
Absolutely.
farmers, making sure we're growing things to send food overseas because that's soft power where people say, oh, our food when we're starving comes from the US.
Yep.
So when there's a crisis, we have good faith in the US, but it's the American farmers who are monetarily benefiting from that. And there are so many farmers around America right now who are saying like, hold on for a second, my contract was canceled. I had one with the government and now I don't. And you're like, no, you had one with a Democratic government and now you don't have one with the Republican government. And that's
Yep.
what we need to be pointing out.
Yeah, and while let's just stick on the farmer theme. When Donald Trump puts tariffs on some nation for aluminum and steel, they retaliate, but they don't retaliate against aluminum and steel. They retaliate where it's going to hurt, and it's going to hurt ag and forestry. That's what they did the last time. that's what they're doing now. And my farmers remembered how badly tariffs hurt their industry. We have a big port in Virginia, so it's easier to export products from here than many places. But when the tariffs get imposed and there's retaliation against them, they lose their markets overseas. They're petrified about this. So we've got to just keep telling the story. And as we move this budget process along, when we get to the end and we're actually voting on the final product, we want everybody in America to know what's in it and who's for that, but who was fighting against tax cuts for the rich and against cuts to the everyday programs that Americans count on.
Well, thank
You
you
know
for
what?
being out there fighting.
Can I introduce you to an amazing guy?
Please.
My friend of 45 years.
Haley.
Hello, Senator Mark Warner. How are you? You're only half a face. You have to kind of lean in on Tim.
I'm kind of like, yeah,